of what used to be. These bones represented the Jews in Babylonian captivity, seeming as if they had no hope now. It looked like it was all over, because now the bones were dry and they were scattered about. The Jews were scattered away from their homeland. Their precious temple that they valued so highly had been destroyed. And now they were strangers in a land that was not theirs. It seemed like these bones represented the death of a nation. And so the question was asked to Ezekiel. As Ezekiel is watching what is going on, God took the opportunity to bring it to his attention and cause him to focus in on exactly what he was looking at. So God asked him, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Look at what God is asking him as he looks at the deadness and the deplorability and the death of such a situation. God is asking, can these bones or can these people ever be revived? And Ezekiel's answer, "Oh Lord God, thou knowest." Oh, perhaps that question is being raised today as we look at the condition of our homes, as we look at the deplorable and deadness of our families. Sometimes it causes us to ask the question, can these bones live? When we see that the father is doing his own thing, when mama is doing her own thing, when daughters are becoming mothers before time, and sons are involved in gang violence and crime, it makes you wonder, can these bones live? I mean, we live in a time when no one sits down and prays together anymore. No values or morals are being instilled in our houses. Our families are dysfunctional, and that mothers are strung out on drugs, and daddy is drunk with alcoholism. Their children are selling and avoiding babies that they're having out of wedlock, and sons are becoming criminals before they can even graduate from college. And when you look at such a tragedy that's happening in your family, it's just like looking at a valley that's full of dry bones, and it calls you to ask the question, can these bones live? And the answer is only the Lord knows. When we look at the deplorable condition of our society, it causes us to ask the question, can these bones live? When America is supposed to be the land of opportunity, but it has become nothing more than a place that houses murderers, thieves, and robbers. When America is no longer our country, tears of thee. It's no longer the sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. It's no longer the land where my father died, the land of the pilgrim's pride. It's hard to hear freedom ring now with the racism at an all-time high. It's hard to hear freedom ring when we're being held captive by our own minds and allowing our children right here in the United States of America to lie out on our streets and die. It's hard to hear freedom ring now when everywhere you look, somebody's life is being taken from them, and the ages of our killers are no longer 34 and 35, but now they're 13, 14, and 15, and the perpetrators who will break in your house and put a gun to your head are 10, 11, and 12, and it makes you wonder, what is the future of our family? What is the future of our society? Is there any hope for our lives? And the answer is only God knows. When you look at our world around us, you see that we are sick with social evils. We are sick with racial injustice. We are sick with poverty and drugs. We are sick with alcoholism. We are sick with sexual immorality. We are sick with hatred and war. And it makes you wonder, where is America the beautiful? Where are the spacious skies and the amber waves of grain? Where is that purple mountain majesty that's supposed to lie above the fruited plains when people all around us are suffering and starving, and when no one seems to care, when the attitude is every man for himself? It makes you wonder what's going to happen next. I mean, even sin ain't looked at as sin no more, because America has become so corrupt that what God sees as sin, we classifies it as something else just to describe what we want to keep on doing. That's the reason why we call stealing embezzlement. That's the reason why we call murder justifiable homicide. That's why we call fornication having relations. That's why we call adultery having an affair. That's why we call shacking up a common law marriage. That's why we call lying just stretching the truth. That's why we call jealousy just having a funny feeling about somebody. That's why we call homosexuality an alternative lifestyle. That's why we call covetousness just keeping what I got. But God sees it, and God calls it what it is, and God says it's sin, and sin ain't never been your friend. Oh, it was sin that caused Adam and Eve to be put out of the garden. It was sin that caused Cain to murder his righteous brother Abel. It was sin that caused David to take another man's wife into his bed chambers and then have her husband put on the front line. It was sin that caused Noah to get drunk and lay out butt naked in his tent. It was sin that caused Abraham to lie about Sarah being his sister. Sin is not your friend, and even though you give it another name, even though you put some more clothes on it, God can see right through the facade, and God recognizes it as sin, and sin will send you to hell. But America has become so corrupt. America has become so conscientious with what he wants to do that he doesn't look at it as sin. And the question becomes, can these bones live? And the answer, so Lord, only you know. Even when we look at the deadness and the deplority of the church, Lord knows our hearts start to burn within us when we start to see the deadness of the world creeping its way into the house of God. We know that Jesus said in Matthew 16:18, he was going to build his church, and that the gates of hell would not prevail against it. But when you look at the church today, you look back at what it used to be and see that it's different from what it is today. When the church was first established, it was a living and a powerful church. It was a church that went from house to house daily, sharing the good news of the gospel. It was a church that catered to the needs of others. It was a church that didn't mind feeding the hungry. It was a church that didn't mind clothing the naked. It was a church that didn't mind visiting folk who were in the hospitals and in prisons. It was a church that took care of the widows and the orphan children. It was a church that ministered to the sin-sick soul, because Jesus said, I have come to seek and to save that which was lost. Oh, it was a church that was on fire, spreading the good news of the gospel, even when their lives depended on it. Oh, but now it is different. Now we see that the deadness of favoritism has crept into the church. We see that the deadness of division has crept into the church. The deadness of corruption has crept into the church. The deadness of hypocrisy and liberalism has crept into the church. All over congregations, there are disputations over doctrinal issues. And the Lord prayed just before he left this earth in John 17 that we might all be one even those of us who believe on him through the apostles' word, that we may be one in